mad over the size of the crowds that Democratic nominee Kamala Harris has been drawing of late. NBC News reports that starting on Tuesday, the vice president will hit 6 swing states over 5 days. Quote, one of the heaviest weeks of campaign-related travel in the general election. It is a huge contrast to her opponent, the 78-year-old ex-president, who's covered 10 states in the last 5 weeks and has just one event on his calendar this week. Vice President Kamala Harris set to pick her running mate in a critical week. In week 3 of her campaign is where we begin today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. NBC News Washington correspondent Yamiche Alcindor is back with us. Also joining us, professor at Princeton University, Eddie Glaude is here. Columnist Charlie Sykes is back. And former senator, host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast, Claire McCaskill is here. All 3 of these friends are MSNBC political analysts. But we start with Yamiche. Yamiche, I know you've got some great reporting of your own about how the vice president is approaching this task of basically replacing herself on the ticket. Tell us what you know.
From my reporting, the vice president is looking at making this decision, leaning in on, of course, both the chemistry and personal rapport that she is going to have with these contenders, but also their governing experience. She wants someone with executive governing experience, is what I was told by several sources. And she wants someone who's going to be ready on day one. But she also wants someone who's going to have to navigate what is this really unprecedented, and I know it's a word that we use a lot, but it's an unprecedented situation that they find themselves in that they have to get up and running really quickly. She wants, I'm told, based on internal polling that the campaign is doing, someone who can appeal to the voters that President Biden would have brought onto the ticket, including older voters, older white voters, which is why you're seeing them lean in, as one source told me, to middle-aged white men. She also wants someone who's going to put people sort of at ease, including moderate Republicans who might be a little cautious about voting for Harris, both only because of her policy issues, but also because of the fact that she's a Black and South Asian woman who would be, of course, a first in the White House if she were to win this election. I was also told she wants someone who's going to be a, quote, bulldog, someone who's going to be ready to go toe-to-toe with the Republicans as they attack her. Not only, of course, on issues like her job when she was dealing with the root causes of migration and what they call the border, but also when it comes to attacking her record as a prosecutor. And even, of course, now when you talk about race and attacking her identity, that's going to be something that's really, really big. Also, because she's going to be the first woman in that seat, I was told she doesn't want someone who's going to undermine her, right? She wants somebody who can be comfortable taking the lead from a woman, who can be comfortable taking on tasks that she gives them, even if they don't like it, and someone who's not going to go behind her back and be talking about her or be leaking things about her if she were to become president, because she did get this nomination in a sort of unorthodox, untraditional way, and that person shouldn't be seen as running for 2028 behind her back. Nicolle.
So, Yamiche, with all of your expertise and knowledge, what is your sense of what all of that sort of detailed reporting on how she's approaching it, does it argue for any one or group of these finalists ahead of any other or few?
It's a great question, but honestly, in talking to sources, it's really hard for me to say who would have the up or the down here, especially because I've always been told over and over again that the list is a little bit longer than what we had, and that there could be out there some dark horse that we don't know about, who could be someone that pops up. Now, it would be very surprising to me if it wasn't one of the people that I have listed and that we've listed as a network. When you look at Shapiro and Kelly and Waltz and the governors that we've been talking about, but I think it's hard to know because I wasn't there, right, in those in-person meetings. But you can see why Mark Kelly's on the list, because he's from a border state. Pete Buttigieg, they have a great chemistry, is what I've told. Andy Beshear is someone who won in a red state and has brought over people who might have been moderate Republicans. You have Tim Waltz, who is someone who debuted the sort of language that the campaign has been using, talking about former President Trump and J.D. Vance as, quote, weird and creepy. So you've had these people that have sort of had their moments where they've looked like, oh, this person could be interesting. Shapiro is another one who is seen as a Democratic star, though there are a lot of progressive groups that have now been sort of coming out and saying negative things about him. So it'll be really interesting who we find out, but we know at least for a fact that we will be finding out by tomorrow. The plan is to have an official announcement tomorrow, but who knows, if my reporting or other people's reporting gets close, maybe we'll get it even sooner, Nicolle.
Well, you know where I am for the next 2 hours, Yamiche. If you get it, you just wave your arms and the airwaves are all yours. Yamiche Alcindor, you're going to have a busy 24 hours ahead of you. Thank you so much for starting us off again today.
Thank you.
Let me show you, Claire McCaskill, some of what we're talking about, this incredible sort of bench of talent. And again, these are just 3 of the folks reported to be under consideration.
These are weird people on the other side. They want to take books away. They want to be in your exam room. That's what it comes down to. And don't, get sugarcoating this. These are weird ideas. These guys are just weird. And it's, they're running for He-Man Women Haters Club or something. That's what they go at. That's not what people are interested in. I think that's what you see that's just so terrifying about these guys like Vance and Trump. Look, they've got their vision of what a family looks like, and I'll defend them to have that. Just don't tell me what my family looks like. I keep talking about the golden rule of small towns is mind your own damn business. Mind your own family. Stay out of our business. And it gets worse than that, though. The policies that they put in place that undermine families.
He said people who don't have children, this is a quote, have no physical commitment to the future of this country.
Wow.
And I just think about how, no physical commitment to the future. Like, when I was deployed to Afghanistan, I didn't have kids back then.
Right.
But I will tell you, especially when there was a rocket attack going on, my commitment to this country felt pretty physical.
Governor, J.D. Vance just said this about you, and these are his words, quote, he compared you to a really bad impression of Barack Obama. What is your response to that?
Is that what he said? That's great. Barack Obama was probably our most gifted orator of my time, so it's kind of a weird insult, I guess. But look, I'll say this about J.D. Vance. It is real hard being honest with the American people when you're not being honest with yourself. J.D. Vance is a total phony baloney. He is the most inorganic candidate I think I have ever seen on the national stage. He doesn't know what he believes, and that is why it is impossible for him to articulate a coherent message to the American people, because he doesn't believe it.
So, Claire, what I'm going to say might not be popular or even in my interest, but it doesn't matter who she picked. Everyone on this list is in a next-level league from the person at the top and in the number 2 spot on the Republican side. I mean, the Harris candidacy is just brimming with enthusiasm and energy and I think a vivaciousness that the Democrats didn't even expect and the Republicans certainly didn't. And everyone on this list is so solid and so talented that I wonder, I mean, sometimes I'm anxious and I'm checking my phone to see if the news is leaked yet. And sometimes I'm like, oh, they're all great. How are you waiting for this news?
Well, first, I've got to give a shout out to my friend Charlie Sykes. I spit coffee over the weekend when I saw how he referred to Trump. That Trump is in the fat Elvis stage of his career. And
I feel like that's named Elvis.
I know, but I love that. I love that. And so I didn't want to go any further in this program without giving love to my fellow pundit Charlie Sykes for the fat Elvis. And by the way, fat Elvis is worried, and so is the weirdo he picked as his running mate. Because, this field is pretty damn good. She really isn't going to get in trouble with any of these selections. Now, having said that, I think Yamisha's right. She's going to want somebody that she can feel a personal connection to, that she feels comfortable with. And we have no way of knowing who that is because we're not in the room when they visit and talk and when she asks questions and he asks her questions. So, I love Tim Walz because he's so plain spoken and relatable. I think Shapiro is boffo and does do something really important in Pennsylvania. Obviously, Pete Buttigieg is one of the most talented communicators active in the political world right now. They're all very, very good. And I don't think we're getting in trouble. I think what's really funny is how people are trying to stir up that there's some big brouhaha in the Democratic Party that we're all fighting over who the vice president should be. In their dreams, we're not fighting over who the vice president should be. It's going to be fine no matter who she picks. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, this was, I think, in the Bulwark today, that the internet is not the real world. Democrats are not actually at war with one another over this election. It relates to, and you know, in the same way that we don't ever lead this program with polls, we don't lead this program with horse race, and we're not going to game out what she gets with one or the other. But I do, in this sort of last news cycle before we know who she picks, I do want to stick with this idea of this massive bench as another accomplishment of President Joe Biden's. I mean, this is the Biden agenda being a magnet, not repellent. This is when you are for bridges and roads and not for injecting bleach. This is what happens to your party. And I wonder, I know the Republican Party is sort of post-inflection point, but I do wonder what happened to all the people who used to care about developing a bench on the other side.
I actually think this is one of the most interesting storylines of the last few years. The Republican Party has been purging its bench. They have been primarying some or exiling many of their best and the brightest. And then we, you know, look up in 2024 and we see which party has a deep bench in the governorship and in the Senate races. And I agree with Senator McCaskill about the fact that the party will come together. It is an impressive group. I have to admit that I am a huge Pete Buttigieg fan. I think that he is the most gifted politician that I can recall seeing in the last 20 or 30 years. Josh Shapiro seems like he is that he has been made for this particular electoral map. I mean, he has won 3 elections in the pivotal state of Pennsylvania since 2016. He was elected governor by 15 points, and he has a 61% approval rating in an absolute must-win state. I have no doubt that everybody's going to come together. I have to admit I'm a little bit troubled by some of the vicious attacks on Josh Shapiro, especially involving Israel. I do think that might leave some scars. I think it makes perhaps the decision a little bit more complicated, but he is a very, very impressive, would be an impressive partner, as would, I think, Mark Kelly in another swing state in Arizona.
You know, Eddie, when this whole sort of process was underway and President Joe Biden made the decision to step off the ticket, my first thought was this is what a healthy body does, right? A healthy organism can take in information from other party leaders, Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, or, you know, the history books will tell the full story of where that all came from, perhaps his family, perhaps his own conscience. And I feel like the search for a number 2 on the ticket is another sign of a healthy body, a healthy political party that is not sort of slashing and burning one another, that looks pretty deliberate. The other thing I will say, and no one has pointed this out, but the fact that nothing has leaked is a sign of deep respect for the candidate herself and her process. What do you make of this? This is probably the last time we'll all be together before we know who the VP pick is.
Well, Nicolle, I think you're absolutely right that it shows that the Democratic Party is healthy, it's vibrant, but there's still some serious fissures. And, you know, like you, I'm sitting here anxious. I think the bench is deep. It's obvious the bench is deep, but I'm also worried. I'm worried about constituencies. I'm worried about the things that have been said about Shapiro and Gaza that Charlie's mentioned and the like. So I think, how can I put this? I think the principle here should be do no harm. Do no harm to the enthusiasm. Do no harm to the young folk who are ready and willing and invested. Do no harm to the base. And part of that involves, I think, and maybe I'm in different circles than Claire and Charlie, I think that involves not kind of billboarding the politics as usual in the pick, if that makes sense. But all this is to say, that's just my anxiety, Nicolle. All this to say